Welcome, everybody, from the State of Affairs podcast. I have got with me today a very decent person and a lovely author, especially on the topic that we are going to touch upon this evening. I am seriously thankful to him in person and also on the professional side because he has actually given me the nod to come up to and conduct this conversation. I seriously beg apologies in advance because there must be and there may be something in language or in anything, but I'll just try to make most of it. Given the limitation of time and given the limitation of the person, because he isn't somebody who will be always coming to our conversations. It's very rarely that I have been looking for this conversation since 2 3 months now. I'll directly introduce the person who is my guest tonight, sorry, and he is Sanjay Upadhya, who is a journalist, author, and an analyst. He has lots of books to his credit. Recent of the books that we'll be talking about is Empowered and Imperiled, Nepal's Peace Puzzle in Bits and Pieces, a very, very relevant and a very hot topic into the present South Asian geopolitical chessboard. He has been working he has worked for the BBC, the Times of London, Khaleej Times, and the United Nations. Presently, he is based in the United States. So I would also like to mention some of his other publications. He has also written Backfire in Nepal, How India Lost the Plot to China, a very must read for all the people who are tracking and studying the neighborhood studies, especially from India. And he has also, to his credit, Nepal and the geostrategic rivalry between China and India. And he has also, to his credit, the Raj Lives India and Nepal. So lots of things that we may not be able to cover into the introductions, but I'll seriously go into the session now. Very welcome to our podcast, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
In this book, that we will be talking about, it's Empowered and Imperiled, Nepal's Peace Puzzle in Bits and Pieces. You have argued, sir, that the landscape of Nepal is fertile for well-meaning initiatives. They often go awry and insist that conspiracy theories aren't necessarily irrelevant just because they are rampant. So kindly just make us understand, what do you mean by that, sir? Was it just something that's a theme of the book, or is it something that has more to do with the book that you have written, sir? Over to you.
Yes, let me just step back and explain something, the nature of the book. The book is based on my blogs. I ran a blog from 2005 to 2021. Every week I would write relevant things on Nepal's internal peace process and the geopolitical dimension of that, because those initiatives are all partly homegrown and partly, externally, facilitated. And the problem there is we have too many external influencers, doing contributing to these experimentations. So just to give an example, Nepal became a republic, a federal democratic republic from a monarchy in around, let's say, even the dates are like subject to dispute. I would say in 2008, when the Constituent Assembly voted to turn Nepal into a republic. So the reason that, well-meaning initiatives is that, the peace process that was begun in 2006 which was based on something called the Delhi Compromise, basically a 12-point agreement between the Maoist and the mainstream political parties that India facilitated. Nowhere in that drive was there a suggestion that Nepal should become a republic, or it should become a federal structured administrative state, or even a secular state from Hindu statehood, because the public demonstrations and all the other things that led up to the change was only forcing the king to give up his power to the political parties and the Maoists. So every step of the way, with too many external participants in our process, this whole thing came to a point where we had one constituent assembly election that could not complete the constitution. So a second constituent assembly was elected. And the day that the constitution was promulgated, it was strange. Instead of being a day of national celebration, a significant part, the southern part of the country, was observing it as a Black Day, because it didn't fulfill the aspirations of certain groups. Some wanted some more, some thought, too many concessions were given. And the amazing thing is that India, which facilitated the whole process, has even to this day not formally welcomed the constitution, because India has reservations on it is not broad-based enough because of the open border between Nepal and India in the south. Any resentment among the population in the south would impinge on Indian security. So India has been pressing for a more broad-based consultation, maybe more amendments to the constitution. So it was in that context that, we are empowered, because this is the first time people's representatives have formulated the constitution. Previous constitutions were gifts from the king, or, not directly written by people's representatives. But at the same time, we are imperiled also, because, we don't know, this whole controversy should not have been allowed to fester, because since we were empowered, we're still imperiled. Nobody knows what's going to happen to the system in, say, next year, because everything seems to be moving in a very ad hoc situation. There is disagreement, there's disgruntlement. So it was basically bits and pieces of relevant posts from my blogs that I formulated into a book.
Sir, there have always been talks about Nepal being at the strategic geostrategic location.
Yes.
But its internal political turmoil always just comes into the way. And I guess
Yes.
From the theme of the book, is it something that's so historical in its existence, or it's something that has external and internal factors that contribute to this internal political crisis, and it's not being able to make most of its geopolitical or geostrategic use in the region also, and even in between India and China?
Yes, that's true, because historically also only the players may have been different, but we had the same problem between Nepal's relationship with Imperial China and Tibet, when Tibet was more or less free, independent, and British India. And the same thing happened when, since 1950, let's say 1947, India was independent. 1950, Nepal became a democratic, towards early steps toward democracy. And it has always, our strategic vulnerability has always risen and receded based on interactions between India and China. Sometimes China has not been strong enough, has been weak. So at those times, certain political trends have been uppermost in Nepal. But when China has become more assertive in Nepal, then the political course takes this away. And I think the problem we have here is we have not been able to find that right balance between our internal politics and external geopolitics. If external geopolitics, they're fast changing, and in Nepali politics inside have not been able to keep pace with those changes, so that there's a sense of tension between those two dimensions of Nepalese realities. And that is a big problem for Nepal, for India, for China, and any other new players, like right now the United States, before it was Britain, now European Union, Japan. There's a dysfunction that for some reason the polity has not been able to withstand those shocks, because uh, let's face it, we have the world's largest democracy in the south, and we have the world's largest authoritarian system in the north, and both of them have legitimate interests in Nepal. India with its open border, China with its Tibet factor, and we just have not been able to reconcile those pressures within our democratic polity, and everything becomes politicized internally. Too many parties, too many factions, and it's just a question of finding that balance.
What about that, sir? If we talk about the monarchy, historically, the role it has played in Nepal, and the absence of a very working and also a rampant civil society that we can talk about, and the factors that
Yes.
also come into the way. How has Nepal's polity been dealing with this thing, that absence of any civil society, or for that matter, irrelevance of the civil society in Nepal? Does that factor contribute to the larger internal political dynamics of Nepal, or it's something that's so engineered and so structural in its existence that it has nothing to do with other factors that are at play?
No, it does, because civil society, unfortunately, has been politicized in the same way. The rest of the political institutions of Nepal have been politicized over the last 15, 20 years. Civil society will articulate its views based on which government is in power. I mean, and that has been a common complaint within Nepal also. And the similar situation with other institutes of state, such as the Supreme Court, where justices and Supreme Court Chief Justice are, appointed based on deals with the major political parties. Yeah, like, this is my person, this is my thing here. So appointments are that, which makes society very heavily politicized. Now, the monarchy, for all its other faults, there was something that was above, tried to be above these political considerations. And when the system, when we went into a republican system, there should have been greater effort to take some positive values of monarchy into the president's office. But no, the president has become another adjunct of the political party he or she represents, which again is a very strange politicization of institutions and individuals. and the monarchy, has no formal place. Informally, it is in existence because the king is in Nepal. He lives in Nepal under government security privileges. He makes his views known. He makes public pronouncements. His religious and cultural roles are still relevant in certain areas, but the system has not been able to replace transfer some of the monarchy's structural resilience into the Republican, into the president's office, into the presidency. And that's one more thing that is being debated in Nepal, whether Nepal should have an executive presidency now, a directly elected presidency, like say France, United States, instead of a ceremonial presidency.
You have also been the book basically where you have traced a decade and a half journey of Nepal, and what are the factors that largely come into this entire thing that we have looked into, sir. I would like to just have an understanding of, and also the viewers must be also looking for this thing, that if you delve a bit deeper on this thing, that of this last decade and a half, what are the basic dimensions that you have looked at into the book, and what as readers we have to keep in mind when we go through this entire book and read it.
It's just that there are certain aspects of the change that in the last decade and a half, let's say we call it the three pillars of Nepal's change, which is republicanism, secularism, and federalism. Now, for the republicanism, the monarchy, the question of the monarchy was never put directly to the people. I mean, the members of the Constituent Assembly, even before doing anything else, just announced the abolition. Now you could argue that the parties that won the election there were Republican parties, so they had the mandate to do that. But in the absence of a more direct manifestation of the popular will, I think even the issue is still here, like whether Nepal should become a monarchy once again, whether the monarchy should be restored. The same thing with secularism. Like before, when Nepal was a Hindu kingdom, it was, say, a Hindu kingdom in name only, basically. People were not that much bothered about these religious fervor. But now, ever since it became secular, the Hindu sentiment has risen. So that's a counterproductive move that happened. And the federalism also, we are a small country, but 7 provinces, for a small country, representation, grassroots devolution, these things are good, but the country has not been able to sustain the financial costs of, state chief ministers and cabinets and state legislatures and all these things, where now the administrative budget consumes about 80% of the Nepalese budget. And development is just 20% of the budget, which is the reverse of what was, say, until 20, 30 years ago. So these things have forced a rethink on the part of the populace, which does not bode well for the longevity or the resilience or the sustainability of the system. And the problem now will be, since we've already tried the most democratic exercise in changing the polity, what do we do after this? I mean, elect a constituent assembly every 5-10 years and change the system, or how does it work? And so these things have to be addressed, because now we have a political, we're going into the election. We have a system, we have Maoist leader Prachanda said the other day that this election is about people who want to keep the Republican system and people who want to, overthrow it. So basically, if 5 years into a new government, 7, 8 years into a new constitution, if we're still talking about, the threat to the system, or uh, how much imperiled are we uh, domestically at a time when the geopolitical equations are changing so fast? We don't know, first the pandemic and now the Ukraine thing, and then everything becomes politicized. Uh, how do we survive as a nation?
We are running out of the time, so I would like you, sir, kindly just get into this thing. Lastly, you are looking at in the book,
Yes.
supposedly, if I am right, Nepal is on the cusp of another change, but without a clear roadmap. And
Yes.
is this stalemate that has been that has been existent because of the internal and external political and geostrategic dynamics of the region, and the politics of Nepal, of course. Is it going to be a stalemate in future? We'll be looking at, is there a glimmer of hope that also comes with this strategic hedging, if Nepal can, and it can choose between India and China, or supposedly some other regional or global power, in order to maneuver through its foreign policy? Are we looking towards that stalemate, sir, in the future, or is it like you have rightly mentioned that it's on the cusp of the change, but it's a directionless thing? It's without a clear roadmap.
It's without a clear roadmap. That's the problem, because we have tried everything else. Now you cannot go back. You cannot go sideways. What is the system? If this system is deemed unworkable, then what is the alternative? And people will say, okay, then let's just streamline this system. But how do you streamline it when there is just too many external variables that are at play, where we don't know what we are, if we have to be in a position to choose between, say, MCC, or the Millennium Challenge Corporation of America and the BRI of China, or say even India and China. Why do we have to be in a position to choose? Both are good neighbors, and both have been very generous contributors to our development in the past. So I think, the political system and the political leadership has to come up with an ability to take into confidence these various legitimate interests, and explain to them, like, look, we are a small country. We have nothing to do with, your power politics. We're here to raise the standard of living of our people, and let us just do not force us to choose a side, because we cannot choose a side, with India, and with India traditionally, and China becoming a rising power, because before, say, in the 1700s, we had a war with China, but China became weak, so China was not that much of a factor. It ebbs and flows, but India has always been a factor. So how can we be expected to choose between, these two great civilizations and these two great nations that are, the world's emerging powers? And the same thing with the United States. It has been a very strong supporter of Nepal's independence and territorial sovereignty. But why should we be able to let us deal with, how we want to deal with China, instead of you forcing us, or advising us in a very counterproductive way about how our relationship with China should be, or whether China should tell us we should have our relationship with the United States or India. So that much depends on the resilience of the political system, the strength. And I think, we have not met the test there. I mean, we have elected government, we have a vibrant political party system, but the system just has not been able to win the confidence of all the external players and leverage Nepal's strategic uh, situation into its own benefit.